Well, it's another year gone and a new year begins. And all of us want to know, what does the future hold? Well, today we're going to bring in astrologer to help us ask the stars what 2022 looks like. Is it going to be a year of thrills and thriving and excitement? Or is it going to be another year of uncertainty, chaos? Well, we're excited to have Rose Marcus, evolutionary astrologer, to ask her expert advice of what's going to happen in 2022. I'm Tony Sweet with Truth Be Told. Please welcome to the Truth Be Told studios for the first time in the last show of 2021, astrologer Rose Marcus.
Thank you so much for that introduction.
Of course. And thank you for doing this. I know it's a busy time of year for you. Everybody's wanting to know what's going to happen. And so we're excited to have you here. And thank you for being on the last show of 2021. So appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. It's been an amazing year, and at the start of the year, I thought oh, God, this is going to be a grind. It's going to be a long, hard grind. And now it's over with in the blink of an eye.
It is. I have to say this year 2020 and 2021 went so fast. I think sometimes, it's like, remember back when you were in school and you couldn't wait to get out of school, but the time just went so slow. For some reason, the isolation for a lot of people, maybe it went pretty slow, but for me, I went fast. 2 years is gone, and I'm already feel like I'm ready for Social Security almost. Well,
yeah.
Well, let me ask you this: you are an evolutionary astrologer, and a lot of people may not know what that is. So before we get started on the predictions, I'd love to hear what that is.
Well, evolutionary astrology is a specialty branch, and astrology is a huge field. There are so many different branches of astrology. It's a wonderful career to have, and there's always something to learn, and it's an amazing field. Evolutionary astrology studies the chart to understand the nature of the soul, the soul's desires for its own evolution. So we look at the chart to see where you're at the moment, and how we can best support your journey in terms of your own soul growth, your own personal growth, and so forth.
Well,
it's a wonderful study.
No, that's great. And, I've had astrologers on before, and I just never heard that term before. So it's great to have my first evolutionary astrologist on.
Yeah, well, it packs a punch. And most people who come into the study or come seeking an evolutionary astrologer, walk away with wonderful information or with a lifelong study.
Wonderful. And so to get us prepared for the interview, how does astrology, and some of us may know, some of us may not, but how does astrology predict the future? Because a lot of times astrology is looking at our past or current situation through our birth dates and all this other stuff. How does it look into the future and see kind of what's going to happen?
Well, astrology is, like history. We look back in history to understand what cycles we went through, and to see if there's any similarity to what is building in the present moment. Astrology is like that as well too, in terms of the predictiveness of astrology. And it does that, but everything is interactive, and there's no degree of separation between you and anything else in creation. Astrology is is a science that is based in observation and correlation. And so, the stars don't make you do anything, and you are not fated in a way that is locked in. The stars show potentials, and what you do with those potentials, that's free will.
Yeah, that's the free will that whatever creator you believe in has given us.
Yeah, it's all about the choice makings of the moment, right? Yeah.
And as you were looking through the predictions, and that's what we're saying predictions because we don't know exactly how free will choose for a lot of people. What can people look for on changing some of these predictions that may not be what we want to hear?
Well, I really do think, Tony, we're so influenced by what we hear, what we read, what we see, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're bombarded. I have to say, we're bombarded with a lot of negativity.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see it through the social media, you see it on the news, and I think it is really important for each and every one of us to pull away sometimes from that constant, exposure to what's going on in the world. I always say that if you want to contribute to the welfare of the whole, if you want to contribute to the universe,
Right.
then it starts with you. Whatever you can do to live your life the best you can live affects the quantum field.
Right.
I was just reading about quantum disruption. Have you heard about that? It's like,
I've heard about it. I don't know. I mean, I definitely don't know a lot about it, but I've heard about
well, basically, science has figured out that, if they disrupt one thing, it affects everything. And I think we can do that ourselves too. If I want to be a great disruptor, maybe I could look at changing my own energy field so that I move into my day with positivity. I move into my day with hope. I move into my day being inclusive with other people, being respectful to all, and so on. And this really is the way to start affecting positive change in some kind of dynamic way. There are so many, oh my God, my heart just breaks for, the people of Kentucky or, my neighborhood, the atmospheric river that washed away farmlands and homes, and on and on and on. I mean, there is no downplaying human suffering, right? There's
right.
absolutely
Right.
no downplaying
Ever.
that.
Yeah.
But that's still going to go on to a certain extent. But in my own personal private world, I can always do something to make the quality of life for myself better and for those around me.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the influence of how today's society, when it comes to social media, and it has, I feel has brought a divide and also has put a lot of negativity out there because we do see a lot of it through. But it reminds me of the old school church ladies and some of the Miss Kravitz of these, our hometowns where they were our social media of that time because they would start their rumors and they would, it always changed by the time it got back to the original person. So, it's been around since, beginning of time. I'm sure how there's always those people that are negative, and it does. When you're around negative people, it does affect your own environment. So, I always say try to find those people that are not going to be those, we call them Debbie Downers. So,
my father always used to do that when I was a child. I would go to the store with him and he would always make the cashier laugh, and I kind of picked up on that as well too. And, if you go into some place and you're kind and you smile, it pops that person up.
Right.
And then that person takes that to the next thing they do, and on, right?
All right, so here we go. So this is what we promoted it as a prediction of 2022. So where do we start? How do you prep? Because 2022 is here, but you have to prep for these predictions. So what do you start looking at first when you start looking for what you can predict for 2022?
Well, I look at what the major planetary influences are for the year, and we have a number of them. So, 2022, I'm going to call it a high watermark year. Okay.
Okay.
So, first of all, we are starting off, and this is the end of the year. Just 2 days ago, Jupiter moved into the sign of Pisces, and Jupiter is a 1 year transit through a sign, and moving through Pisces is a really important transit. Now, a lot of people who know a little bit of astrology know about Jupiter as being the greater benefic. So, good luck comes your way, good fortune comes your way, you're going to make, all these wonderful things are going to happen. Jupiter is the planet of increase, and it increases wherever it goes. And it is in the sign of Pisces, as you have on the screen here. So that's the fish swimming in two directions. So Jupiter in Pisces, Pisces is an archetype of potential. And that's the first thing I want to say about that. And Jupiter through Pisces is the search for our ideals, our search for ultimate solutions, our search for our ultimate salvation, the search for the ultimate vocation, the ultimate soulmate. It's got to do with all of that. And so, the transit has the opportunity to bring inspiration, bring hope, bring faith. But of course, Jupiter in Pisces as well, too, have to say that collective disillusionment is huge, right? So we are moving through a period of time where that mass disillusionment exists, right? And as we were talking just a few moments ago, we have to find the silver linings in the day, right?
Right.
So as we look forward, and something out of nothing, I think that and Jupiter in Pisces, by the way, it opens up our ability to imagine and to dream. And it's really important for us to stay hopeful and to imagine and dream a new reality. Jupiter in Pisces is really, it's quite a lovely aspect for romance, and it's wonderful for everything to do with creativity, imagination, music, and movies. So we should see some really wonderful things coming out of that. And Jupiter is, as I said, a 1 year transit through a sign, but it's moving rather fast in 2022. So between now and the middle of May, Jupiter is going to be moving through Pisces. From the middle of May to the middle of October, Jupiter will dip into the sign of Aries, and that's a completely different energy. And then from the middle of October through until the end of December, Jupiter will be back in Pisces. So we're going to have quite a spread there in the year. When we're looking at Jupiter in Aries, there's going to be a lot more action. And of course, that puts everything on the increase. I think that if interest rates are going to go up, they're likely to go up when Jupiter is in Aries. But Aries is a mobilizing archetype. Pisces rules the immune system. And while Jupiter moves through Pisces, which is a sign that corresponds to the mass experience or global activity, I think that we still are dealing with the pandemic. And I think the pandemic, I have to say, is around for most of this year and perhaps for the next 18 months. But I think that as time moves forward, we're going to get a better handle on it. We'll get it better stabilized. Jupiter in Aries, mid-May to mid-October, is likely to give us more opportunity to get out and about and so forth. But while Jupiter is moving through Pisces, it is going to suggest that we are vulnerable and we need to protect our immune system. There's a very important transit that is happening with the Jupiter in Pisces, and that is April 12th. On April 12th, Jupiter will team up, conjunct planet Neptune, which is in the sign of Pisces. Now, Jupiter, wherever it goes, and you might think back 12 years, whatever was taking place for you 12 years ago, that was Jupiter moving through a particular area of your chart. It will be revisiting that area of your chart, and it starts a new 12-year cycle. I was just talking to a friend the other day who said 12 years ago was when she had her liver transplant, and that's amazing because Jupiter rules the liver, right? So a whole new cycle for her. So on April 12th, Jupiter moving around the wheel, one sign per year mostly. At every 13 years, Jupiter and Neptune are going to join forces. The fact that Jupiter and Neptune are together in the sign of Pisces, which is the sign that Neptune rules, and Jupiter was the ancient ruler of Pisces, that's momentous. That is a transit that happens once every 167 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an amazing transit. So what that does is it puts it's global. It puts mass consciousness. It's an attunement archetype. We're all focused on something. During one of those transits a few years ago, different sign, for example, death of Diana and death of Mother Teresa. And, when Diana died, how the whole world was in collective grief around that, like that's that kind of influence of a transit of that nature. And certainly the pandemic is making us aware that we're all in it as one, right? That's that Neptune Jupiter transit. But because Jupiter is an expansion archetype and it's connected to Neptune in Pisces, which is the ocean, this is why I'm calling this maybe a high watermark year for the pandemic. I think that this is a peak year for that. Just as in my research, looking back, in various other times when Jupiter and Neptune were together, pandemics were taking place, and they were, cholera and yellow fever and so on, were lasting for years, right? So we are moving through a period of time where I have to say is that we're not getting back to the way things used to be. So that Jupiter and Neptune and Pisces makes us realize that we're moving through a major transition. And just as we're talking about with the collective consciousness and where people are at and so on, we're shifting our beliefs. We're shifting the way we're relating to one another. We're shifting the way we're living on the planet.
Well, I mean, yeah, that was a lot of information, but there is a lot when it comes to, Jupiter and Pisces and, the Neptune in April 12th. I mean, that's a lot of information that I think people should really pay attention to, because, like you said, 2022 is, I think, a pivotal year in a lot of ways because, from the pandemic, I don't really want to get too into the politics, but, politics and then just humankind, because, even people in the chat room are talking about UFOs, they're like, predicting hopefully UFOs or in some good ways that UFOs will present themselves in 2022, and then some people think it might be a invasion of UFOs. So, and even religion. And so, what's your thoughts on that?
Those are topics of Pisces, religion. Again, there's a truth and reconciliation. That Canada is seeking from the Pope. Regarding the residential school trauma,
right?
And commercialization of space, the final frontier, that's Jupiter.
Right.
Jupiter is an exploration. It's going on an adventure. And where is the next new frontier? During times when Jupiter and Neptune were together, there was colonization all over the planet, and so we have the space thing going on as well too. And what was the other thing I was going to mention? You mentioned three things.
Well, religion, politics, and then like the UFO or space exploration.
And and I mean, we're looking for life on other planets already, and we're looking
right.
for is it possible to actually colonize other planets and so forth, right? So this is I think a pivotal year for all of that, and I think we're going to see quite a huge growth in these areas for sure. Another thing that Pisces rules is drugs, and we have the opioid crises that that is so devastating to so many families, right? Hospitals are another item that Pisces rules, and with Jupiter in Pisces, our hospitals, our medical workers, our social services, these are all programs that are going to have to look to be, reworked in some way, right? We have to put more attention there. Climate change. And climate change is here to stay, and of course, Jupiter in Aries. Aries rules things like fire and rising temperatures and so forth. And Jupiter aligned with Neptune, and Jupiter moving into Aries. We have the doomsday glacier and the threat of that raising of sea level. We're going to see in 2022 more weather extremes, more wildfires, more flooding, more natural disasters like the tornadoes and earthquakes, and all of that kind of stuff. We're in it for the long haul, I think, here.
So when you look at the stars and is dates and times being very specific can give you a more accurate reading of
knowing about those dates and cycles, vastly important. Right now we're starting the year with Venus retrograde, and it's in the sign of Capricorn.
Right.
Now Venus is generally about a 3-week transit, but because of the retrograde cycle that goes to the end of January 29, Venus will stay in the sign of Capricorn to the beginning of March. And this is a very, very important transit. Now, Venus is the planet of relationships, right? I always say the theory of relativity, and that's my relationship to me, my relationship to you, and my relationship to us. And Venus is the planet of evaluation. It's a planet of net worth and self-worth, and it also has to do with survival. Right. So it's got to do with all of those things, money, Venus and Capricorn. Capricorn is an archetype that correlates to existing reality, and it correlates to your relationship to external authority. It talks about career things. It talks about your consciousness and the limits, of how you think or what is limiting you in your life. Venus retrograde is a reassessment, reevaluation timetable. And it's also one that dials up the unfinished business of relationships. So, people often go back into, relationships that they have, ended, and they go back for another round, right? Or people from the past come up, or even, if you're doing that through thinking and looking back, right? It's a cycle when fated things happen, karmic, things happen, you meet with destiny in some kind of way. So this is a very, very important transit. And as we move into the month of February, it's interesting because Venus will be slow in its orbit when it finishes its retrograde at the end of January. And moving through the month of February, it's moving rather slow. And we're going to have Mars also in the sign of Capricorn in the month of February. And so for most of the month, Venus and Mars are going to toggle, and they're going to be
Right.
together. And so by the time we get to the beginning of March, Venus and Mars are going to start a new cycle, and that'll be March 6th at 0 degrees Aquarius.
Mm.
That 0 degrees Aquarius, Mars and Venus are a 2-year cycle in terms of relationship processing, relationship dynamics. Every 2 years, you're doing a new track, with that, right? And Pluto is the agent of the soul. It is the deep, profound, core, fundamental change, the desires of the soul for evolution. So it's a big one. Pluto is the metamorphic process of one's evolution. So we start someplace, we start with one thing,
Right.
and we shape shift it into something else, right? Mars is what we call the cutting edge of soul desires. You put the two of those together, Mars and Pluto are a 2-year cycle in terms of you reconnecting with your soul's deepest desires for your growth and evolution. So Pluto and Mars are going to come together and do a new cycle at the beginning of March. Venus and Pluto are going to come together at the beginning of March and do a new cycle. And then Venus and Mars are going to do a new cycle. That's Mars, Pluto in Capricorn, Venus, Pluto in Capricorn, Mars, Venus in Aquarius. So between now and then, we're going to be moving through quite a lot, right? And
Sounds
it might
like
be some hard work for people in terms of confronting your reality. It is asking yourself why you're perpetuating, a lifestyle, a relationship, a career that is not making you, thrive, or not doing it for you in whatever way it might be. And as we work through these things, it's a compelling force of evolution, I think, taking place over the next month or so to get us up and rolling with a new consciousness and with a new ambition. So Capricorn is about ambition, and it's about goals. And so while Venus is retrograde to the end of the month, it's about reassessing those goals, those priorities, the obligations, where you feel indebted, the debt you might be carrying, and so forth. And looking to, as things move into Aquarius, that Mars and Venus moving into Aquarius, it is to, come up with some new solutions, to try some new angles, to consider a new lifestyle, to consider all the changes that maybe your heart really, really wants to make, but that you didn't have the courage for yet. And I will say that Venus-Mars new phase on March 6th will be triggering, the work that's going to be done in 2023 and 2024 as Pluto, which is a big picture evolutionary agenda, moving into the sign of Aquarius. Pluto will move into Aquarius in March of 2023. It won't be solidly there to the end of 2024.
Right.
And it's going to stay there for 20 years.
20 years.
So, radical reinvention of reality from the ground up, that's what we face. And so the sooner that you get with the program and put a little courage behind your desires, the more opportunity exists for you.
I was going to ask that because, it's like buying a new car or getting a new phone or something where there's a lot of things on your phone or in your car that you didn't know existed. Like, instead of putting your key in the car door and unlocking it, you're like, oh, I didn't know I could actually push this button on my key and it would unlock my door. It's like with astrology, it sounds like there's a lot of things that you can prepare for or even make big changes in your life. But if you don't know what to expect, unless they hear this on Truth Be Told or another show about through an astrologer what to prepare for. I mean, that to me, that seems like there's millions and billions of people that might be missing out on opportunities through what the stars have to tell you.
When I was a child, I used to have this imagination about there being multi-dimensional universes.
Right.
And now we've got metaverse, right?
Right.
And I always question, like, well, why is my reality this way? It could be that way instead. Why am I making this choice instead of that choice? But in terms of that, I've said this many times, for those who don't know what to do, as I say, keep doing what you're doing until there's something else to do, and then go do that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, in some cases, it like, how would we ever know, Tony, that you and I were going to be sitting here on the
Right.
computer talking to one another just a little while ago? Facebook didn't
Exactly.
exist a little while ago,
Right.
and now it's our everyday reality. So I think the one thing that the listeners need to know out there is that radical reinvention of existing reality from the ground up is here, and we're on the threshold of that. And if you will simply accept that as a reality, then you will be automatically opening up the door to possibility.
Mm, mm. That makes perfect sense. That makes
It doesn't
perfect
it
sense.
though?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you know? I couldn't imagine when I was younger that TV, for example, would be any way different than it is.
All right. 3 channels and and I
you
remember
know.
when I always tell people when I was a kid, my hometown in Kansas, that we actually had a party line, and they're like, "What's a party line?" It's like
Yeah, I
it's
did
not when you got
too.
on and going, "Hey, it's party." No, it's like your neighbor and you use the same line, so you would pick it up, and the neighbor would be having a conversation with somebody else wherever, in another town, and you're like, "Oh, okay, they're busy talking," so you hang up and wait till they're finished. But now we're, each one of us has cell phones that stream and can do anything. So yeah, it
Oh
is.
yeah, yeah. It's totally amazing, right? It's totally amazing. So we've got a lot to look forward to in the year ahead, and again, put some courage and initiative forward, and do a little out of the box, imagining, and see where it takes you.
Do you think in 2022, because there has been, I'm hoping I'm not throwing something out there that you're not prepped for, but with a lot of private companies now, such as Elon Musk and the guy from Virgin, what's his name?
Richard Branson.
Richard Branson. A lot of these private companies are now putting money into the space programs and space travel. Do you predict, or do you see in the stars that might be a wave of the future where like NASA becomes not irrelevant, but becomes less and less influential? Because we still get it's, I feels like sometimes they're releasing things to stay relevant.
Well, yeah, I think NASA will always be NASA, and I think what a brilliant institution that
Yeah.
that
Right.
I mean, science really, but I do expect that commercial space travel will grow exponentially. I do, and I think we can expect a lot more of that. What worries me is space junk. I have to say, we've done a good job of polluting the planet. Now let's go pollute space too.
Right. Right.
you know, so that's something that I think we need to address.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
And we only have, just like I said, I can't believe again, time goes fast. We have about 7 to 10 minutes, and I just want to throw some questions out there. Again, if you're comfortable with
Mm-hmm.
prediction of not necessarily Pacific Party, but politically, do you see any resolution when it comes to trying to get the politics back on track? I mean, it could be in Canada, it could be, because that's where you're at.
Well, this is very interesting because Pluto, the bigger picture evolution here,
Right.
the USA is having a birthday of sorts in 2022, and perhaps listeners out there know that in 2022 Pluto has its Pluto return. And what a Pluto return is, or return planet is that when that planet um, again goes full circle and comes back to the position that it was at the inception of that country.
Mm-hmm.
So Pluto is traveling, coming onto the USA Pluto, and that's a 248-year cycle.
Wow.
Every 248 years, when Pluto comes round to Capricorn, which is the archetype of reality, So what I say is it swings its wrecking ball on any structure, system, consciousness, or reality that has outworn its time has come. And we've been watching this over the past few years with things like the Me Too movements and, the systemic racism issue and,
Right.
all of that kind of stuff. This is a collective consciousness that has been, that is reaching its time has come moment, or the end of the road, basically. Capricorn brings things to an end while it's bringing something else into being. And when Pluto goes to Capricorn, empires rise and fall, borders and boundaries change, and so forth. So, England has had several Pluto returns, and it hasn't, met with its demise, but it has undergone tremendous change. And that's what we see going on in the USA. It's an evolutionary imperative to make some core and fundamental change. And I do think that what happens in the USA, it's a lead nation, it's kind of a signature for what's happening globally anyway, right? So I think that all countries are looking at, the populace in relationship to the authority, and how that relationship has to change in some very, very big way, right? So this is an outstanding year for the USA, for the USA politics. There's enormous pressure on the government, at a financial level, and at the duty and responsibility level, and so on, like at all levels. And it is fascinating too this year. In any given year, and I didn't mention this a few moments ago, but another big transit that we have this year is that the karmic axis, which is the nodal axis, these are sensitive points that the moon travels along relative to the moon. The karmic axis is a 18-month cycle through a sign polarity. For the past 18 months, it's gone through the sign polarity of Gemini and Sagittarius, and it's been in dynamic tension to Neptune and Pisces, which is one of the signatures that when I took a look at that, I said the pandemic is here for another 18 months. That is the variant and the domino effect of, the transmission from person to person and so on, from nature to humankind and so on, right? As of January 18, the nodal axis shifts to Scorpio and Taurus, and that's the south node moving through Scorpio and the north node moving through Taurus. That's the survival axis that deals with finances, economies, and survival, at all levels, including our own mortality. And of course, climate change is definitely a threat to our survival on the planet, right? It's all those things. I think by the time we get through that 18-month cycle, because the lead is Taurus, that's the evolutionary forward, I think by the time we get to the end of that in 18 months, we'll be perhaps better stabilized. Although I have to say that Pluto in Aquarius is still going to keep that kind of disruptive energy going for a while. So that 18-month cycle where the karmic axis is also relevant to eclipses. And in any given year, there is 4 to 6 eclipses. In the year of 2022, we will have 4 eclipses. And both of the lunar eclipses, which is May 15 and November 8, are total lunar eclipses. So the November 8 in particular is the midterm election.
I was going to say, it's the midterms.
Midterm, right? So that's going to be, again, another statement of, kind of a watershed year for USA and USA politics, right? So there's a lot going on in the country, right? So we will watch that. Now, in 2021, Saturn and Uranus were dominating the year. And when I said about that transit, they were in dynamic tension. I said traveling with the brakes on, right? Taking a long time to bust up the past, and the future is so slowly showing up. And in the middle, we've got some thick soup. That transit is now dissipating but it comes back in 2022 from about the end of August through about November. So it's encompassing that midterm election. So I think that there'll be just as much as you have seen with US politics of the divisiveness and the volatility and all of the things that you've seen. I don't expect it to tone down for that midterm election.
Yeah,
Right?
I don't see that either.
Yeah.
Well, before we go, I want to ask one question from the chat room. I asked and see if anybody had a question, but didn't want to make it personal. But Easy said, did we enter the age of Aquarius in 2012, or is that going to be later?
The age of Aquarius is a lengthy transition process. It takes about 500 years.
Oh, is that all?
And yeah, and so we haven't entered it yet, but the new cycle of Pluto starting in 2024, that's one of the harbingers of that. And at the end of 2020, we had the alignment of Jupiter and Saturn in the sign of Aquarius, 0 degrees, where that Venus-Mars position is going to be on March 6th, by the way. So interesting there. And that Saturn-Jupiter conjunction on the winter solstice in 2020, they were talking about that being the Star of Bethlehem, but that kind of thing. That started a new 240-year cycle in cultural and social development. So another era. So we have cycles within cycles within cycles. We're at the threshold of the transition now.
And what is the age of Aquarius? What's going to occur in that particular age?
Well, Aquarius, again, I'll say that we're getting a taster of Pluto in the sign, moving into the sign of Aquarius. It's a radical reinvention of reality, right? So Aquarius rules things like technology and science. It also rules like quantum physics and and brain activity. So they say that we only use a very small portion of our brain. We're gonna open up consciousness in vast ways. Again, it's about understanding the multidimensional universe, right? And I think that there's many things to say about the sign of Aquarius. It's group consciousness. And community and all of that kind of thing. But Aquarius is the archetype of shattering of consciousness, shattering of reality. Mm-hmm. One of the things that is worrisome, I think, with Aquarius themes are mental illness, right?
We see a lot of that.
We have genius with Aquarius, and we have mental illness with Aquarius, trauma, PSTD, right? And I think that that's another, mental health is another really big, important topic that we need to address, right?
No, everywhere. Everywhere you go, it seems to be increasing more and more. Have you ever, and this is my last question, I'll let you go, but I've really appreciated you being on the show, but have you ever jumped forward to 2020 or 3025 to see if humankind will survive? Have you ever?
Well, it's all about the choice makings,
right. We're not known for making great choices.
I will say that we are in peril, and Greta Thunberg had a point. She was out there campaigning,
right.
It is really important, we can't just reduce. We have to stop.
Right.
We have to move in a completely different direction if we want to. Yes, we will survive in one form or another, but we've got critical times ahead, and taking climate change seriously, that's a really important thing to do.
Yeah, and like for the people out there, it's like you don't have to. Let's think of climate change as something that's just, even if it's a natural occurrence, it's happening. So it's we just have to prepare for whatever. I always said that movie, The Day After Tomorrow. I don't know if you remember that movie. It was Jake Gyllenhaal, and out of nowhere, these big changes in the planetary environment, where the United States became pretty much a ice age again, and we had to all move south, and the people above a certain area was not going to make it. So it seemed so far-fetched at the time, but now it's like, it's the earth is fragile, it's and everything's so unpredictable. So but
I think some of the sci-fi stories sometimes are presaging.
Yeah, right. Well, I hope prediction says that you'll be back on our show in the 2022 at some point. I hope you would be back and maybe midway through and guide us in the next 6 months into the year, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Tony. I'd love to be on again.
And people can go to your website and tell us what do you have. You can do readings, events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you can sign up to get my free monthly newsletter. That's rosemarcus.com. I teach classes and I see clients privately.
Awesome. And please support Rose. I love that name. That was my mom's maiden name. So, but please, everybody, support Rose Marcus and go to rosemarcus.com. And thank you guys for being with us in 2021. And I hope 2022 you guys will be here every Monday for Minutemen Report, every Wednesday for Truth Be Told Transformation with Bonnie Burkert, and then here every Friday, even though today's Thursday, but every Friday at 3 o'clock on Truth Be Told with myself. Have a great new year. Happy New Year. Go have a great time, and let's bring in this brand new year together in spirit and harmony. So until next week, take care, guys. This has been another episode of Truth Be Told. Thank you so much for watching. Recorded live at UBN Go Studios in Burbank, California. Join us on social media. Facebook, Truth Be Told Radio. Instagram, Truth Be Told Paranormal. Go to Truth Be Told Worldwide for more information on upcoming shows.